Welcome into the Boardroom Podcast. I'm Ward 6 Alderman Ben Piper.
Ward 4 Alderman Chad Wicker.
It is July. This is a monumental day, Chad. I don't know if you know about this day.
What's
July
that?
2nd, 2025. We are officially one day closer to 2050 than we are
okay.
2000.
We're across the middle.
So we're officially through the first quarter century of the second millennium, I guess. I don't know. Here's what's important is that we're aging rapidly. I'm slowly turning to dust, more or less. And it is July 4th weekend coming up.
Yes, one more work way.
A lot more.
A lot of people like the holiday before the weekend, so you can, have your 4th on the Friday and then recover Saturday and Sunday. So
I think the lakes are going to be full this weekend.
Right.
I think the pontoons are going to be pontooning.
Pontoons are pontooning, huh?
Yes, sir.
I know somebody likes to go down to Moon Lake.
Oh, do you? I think I know who you're talking about.
Bring them in.
Let's bring him in. It is our Hernando City Attorney, Steve Pittman. We're here in his office today.
Historic
Steve,
building.
Is it Steve or Mr. Pittman? Are we going to be like that?
Well, let's
normally
go
we're
with Steve today.
Okay, let's go with Steve.
Since we're
Steve,
friends
welcome in.
here.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome into the Boardroom Podcast. So this episode.
Before we get started,
yeah.
I want to say that was a really great song.
Yeah.
I understand Chad wrote that.
I take the credits on that. Yep.
And let's take credit for our board who solved that issue, and we wrote a good letter to get that started. So
Yeah.
yours truly took care of that and got it going.
Well, what's funny now, so Steve, and you probably know this, so we solved the problem in Hernando, but now I work in San
you moved
Antonio.
south.
Right, and so now not all the time. It's not nearly the issue it was up here, but obviously sometimes the traffic's blocked there. I have to deal with it. It makes me I'm still stuck at the train. So.
Yeah, well, that's how it goes. But we're looking out for Hernando.
Absolutely,
and that's
yeah.
a really nice
And
quality of life issue. So, just one of the many things that y'all do and we do as a group.
Yeah, we've talked before about maybe putting a new song in because that issue's kind of been resolved. I don't really hear about it anymore.
The people that love the song really love the song. So I need it on my Spotify personally. I need to get it added for 4th of July weekend.
That's just the first verse, man. I got more.
Yeah, I believe it.
More coming up. All right. So we do have a couple things going on in town real quick.
Okay.
Before we jump into our meeting, we had a meeting on July 1st, the first meeting of the new board of aldermen, including 2 new aldermen, Kit Kitchens and Lauren McClendon. But before we jump into that meeting, so on Saturday, July 5th, big day at the farmers market, right?
Yes.
There's free hamburgers as long as they last. Alderman Andrew Miller and Police Chief Shane Ellis and Assistant Chief Charles Lanford will be slinging some burgers out there. They said that they'd be ready around 9:30ish, somewhere around in there. So that'd probably be the first one. So if you're hungry early, just skip breakfast, come eat a burger off the charcoal grill there. So free burgers out there. It's always a really packed farmers market on July 4th weekend, so come on out for that. On July 4th itself at 9 a.m., there will be a dedication of a Veterans Memorial on the Courthouse Square. The Veterans Parade Committee in Hernando has done a phenomenal job of raising the funds to make that a reality.
I think each city gave 5,000. Is that correct?
I believe that's right.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that's right. But a really nice addition to the courthouse square.
I want to say something there, Ben. Our firm, my firm, besides being city attorney, I have a private practice as well, and we may get into that today. But we're one of the presenting sponsors of the Veterans Day Parade every year, Chatham, Gilder, Howell, Pittman. So we're proud to do that, and it's a great, Randy Martin kind of headed that up, and
Absolutely,
he's one of our great citizens and our great city, and so that's just another good asset that we have.
Yeah, and I've seen a preview of it. It looks fantastic out there. They put it. That's a good spot for it right there.
Yeah, right outside my door. I get to look at it every day, so I'm thankful.
So we got a couple things coming up there. Make sure you put those on your calendar if you haven't already. There's still a couple days before those events get cranked up.
Talk about the tee-off for teachers tournament. Can teams still register?
Unfortunately, we're sold out on teams.
Whoa.
The crew of so this is a big deal. The crew of Hernando tee-off for teachers tournament is coming up on July 24th at the Hernando Golf and Racquet Club. We are still looking for whole sponsors. If you have a business, or even if you yourself, just hey, me and my family, we want to donate $125 for teacher grants that put money straight back in the classroom. You could do that, and we'd put you a nice little sign out there for your family. But the goal this year was to raise $50,000 for our teacher grants, and we are 90% of our way to our goal. So somebody that's better at math can figure out what that exact number is. But we're closing in on that goal. We've got a lot.
I think we're all liberal arts guys here, so I don't do math.
Yeah, I don't know. But we have Skylake Construction is the presenting sponsor of that. We've got a great lunch sponsor, Addison Tree Care, and then Master Lawns is the golf cart sponsor. So they're helping us get some nice golf carts out there for everybody to enjoy that day. So we appreciate all them doing that. And full transparency, I'm a member of the crew and on that kind of steering committee, I guess, if you will, to sort of get that tournament off the ground and get going. But it's the 5th year, exciting for that. All right, so we
covered to the meeting.
Yeah, we're covered on all the events. That's some of the current events that are going on there.
Probably one of the longer meetings we've had in a while. It's the first meeting of the new board term, so we have a complete new board. So we had to reappoint all our every city employee got reappointed last night. So everybody from the city attorney to police chief, clerk, all those people. So
and it is a little odd how this works out with the state of Mississippi is that. This didn't necessarily happen in Hernando because we didn't have a general election with Republicans and Democrats and all that. But the cities that did, it was in early June, and then you're basically put into office a month later, and then you're asked to make a bunch of really important decisions.
Absolutely.
So you're having to decide who's the fire chief, who's the police chief, who's your city attorney. For example, we're sitting here with one right now.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily have just a ton of time to stew on it and think about it and make the decision. You got about a little under a month in some cases. Our two new aldermen, a little bit more of a advantage there. They had a few months to think about that and have some conversations with members of the board.
I think
and
it's no
department
secret.
heads.
I mean, we met with them. They met with the alderman. They met with the mayor. I think they may have met with the city attorney or talked to them on the phone. They had some ideas of what was going on, and they're very two intelligent people. They're not dummies, so they're gonna. And they call on quick.
We'll jump in right there. 4 years ago, all three of us were new.
Yes.
In our positions, first time alderman and first time for city attorney for me. We're 4 years into this, and so we have learned a lot together. And there's a lot that goes into city government or any type of government, and you do like to see these younger residents of Hernando step in, and they're eager to serve, and that's exciting to see. And and they'll learn the ropes. And last night was just the first step, and we'll go from there, make some good decisions for the city.
Real quickly on some of I know anybody that watched the meeting, there was some some early discussion about making some changes to the agenda. I think Alderman Kitchens wanted to add some. He wanted to move a couple items to executive session, which included the appointing of our police chief Shane Ellis, and also the contract with our city attorney and assistant city attorney. Wanted to move those to executive session. Those were voted down by a 2-5 vote. And for myself, I think it was something where we probably, in making motions like that, it's always good to take them kind of one at a time. When multiple things get piled into a motion, things get a lot more complex and complicated because it's sort of that's not necessarily how I would have wanted to handle it. So I think what we've got to do is, it's a learning curve, and I think that he and I talked about that after the meeting. Hey, look, first meeting, there's a learning curve there. Let's take it nice and slow. If you ever have questions, let me know. Happy to help with
Sure.
just the procedure and things because it is very complicated. There's kind of a parliamentary procedure and that sort of thing to the meeting. So I think we're gonna get that streamlined as things go forward.
If you want to talk about that just a little bit, on the city attorney, which is my role, and we presented a little bit different contract this year, and it's all in the letter that we wrote to the city, and that's part of the minutes. And if anyone wants to go take a look at that, but Mr. Kitchens' concern was, and I respect it, was with regard to the assistant city attorney and her billing her hourly rate, which will be the same as mine, which is it's a government rate. It's not what you would charge in private practice. It's less than that. But that was a great question, and I'm actually glad that we discussed that question in open meeting as opposed to executive session. And the point about the whole need to have an assistant is that, the city of Hernando is growing very rapidly, and I know a lot of people don't like to hear that, but it's really not anything that we can do to stop it. We're just trying to manage it and do it wisely and make good decisions. We're not always going to make decisions. You guys aren't always going to make decisions that make everybody happy.
That's right.
But we have got to, my office has got to wear a lot of hats, and, it's gotten to be where the duties are daily for the city attorney. I've worked on several projects this morning, so there's a need. The other major cities in the county have full-time city attorneys, and that's a six-figure salary. We're not anywhere close to billing the city at that rate, and so we're really saving money at this point. And that will change as we go along. As the years go by, it's going to be more demanding.
I know it. I know at least in my personal life. What? You got to have an attorney from time to time.
In my experience, they always wait to the end of the year to bill, so it's not my fault they don't bill it. It's not my fault.
Well,
I would just the city's rate's $175 an hour with with our attorney and our assistant attorney. Folks I've used privately or whatever else, $300-400 an hour.
Yeah, that's a very reasonable rate for sure. And just I was thinking about it. Have we ever explained what executive session is for some people who may not know what that is?
We may have briefly, but you're better at explaining this stuff. Like, I feel like you're really the.
I'm glad this is recorded, Steve.
You're really the one.
I'll let the attorney.
Matters that are of executive session nature are matters that touch on legal issues or personal issues regarding a certain person,
contract negotiation, things like that.
Contract negotiations or sensitive personal matters that need to be discussed in private. The city's duty to the public is to give the public an idea of what will be discussed in executive session. We can't just not say anything about it because the public has a right to know what we talk about in meetings. And so it's important that we do that, and we've done a good job of that. But I was fine with talking about that particular issue in open session. And Mr. Kitchens brought up the total that I've billed, which is embarrassingly low. Honestly, over 4 years.
Let's keep it there. I like
that's good, and we try to. We do not abuse that billing. Mainly because my practice has never really involved billing, and so it's not my favorite thing to do, and that takes extra time. And of course, and so I let a lot of things go, but the more demanding the job is, the more it takes me away from my other practice, and so there's going to have to be, more accountability there, and I think there will be.
Steve, and I don't want to speak for you, but your law practice is in the city of Hernando.
It is.
You live in the city of Hernando.
Correct.
You have deep roots here. I think you care about the city of Hernando, so you're looking out for the city of Hernando by doing that.
I do.
That's just one way.
Yeah.
Not saying you're donating your time.
Oh,
but
no.
I think that's part of it too. You've always been a good business citizen and a good citizen of the community.
Well, one thing I mentioned we try to do is we've got a new system that we're keeping up with everything we do for the city, and so I'd like to try to give a report every month of the things that are included in the retainer fee, okay, which is a lot. There's a lot that there's phone calls, there's emails, there's this issue with this department, this issue with this department. Will you please read this for me? Let me know what I should do in this situation. There's a lot of things like that go on that we do not bill for. We consider those as part of our retainer fee. And so, that's probably, I'm probably allow more of that to be not billed than some other attorneys would. Okay, but if you're obviously these attorneys that are full time, they don't bill. They just get paid a salary, a six-figure salary. But
sound like they have a higher retainer and don't bill as many hours.
Well, they don't. I think if they're full time,
they just get
on salary. Yeah, they're on staff. They don't. They just get paid like anybody. It's I don't know. I haven't looked at it.
Yeah.
But someone mentioned $120,000 a year, which I know that sounds like a lot, but it's
not for a good attorney. It's not.
Yeah, it's not in private practice. If you're good, you would certainly hopefully whatever. It's not all about money. It's about how well you do your job.
Sure.
And that bleeds over into the civic practice that we've done with the city. I've had this conversation with Mayor Johnson, recently, is that, when we first jumped into this job, I was seriously questioning why I got myself into it, because I was getting asked all these questions I didn't know the answers to. You know what I mean? It's a totally different animal, and there's just a lot of it's not your normal reasoning as far as what you're trained to do in law school and what you do in practice. There's a different approach, and everything's a little bit different. And so once you started learning more answers to the questions, it gets easier.
Sure.
You know, once you do an annexation, or once you quiet a title on a piece of property you're trying to sell, or once you read all these contracts and you look up and you get attorney general opinions, and you know, you get more comfortable with doing that, and you get to be better at what you do. So that just comes with experience. And so we're 4 years in. We're going to do 4 more here. So we'll see how that goes.
All right, Ben, what you?
I do think that you know, sometimes people, we get talking about attorneys and stuff. We live in Mississippi. Everybody reads John Grisham novels nonstop, right? I mean, or maybe that's just me. I don't know. So sometimes you think like, oh, there's there's somebody that's out there. It's like, well, I thought about your case for a couple hours. Someone will bill you for a couple hours or something like that. So that's one of those things. I think people just, it's fictional. It's
what
fictional.
was the name of that firm? Benini something. Memphis.
That's right. That's right.
John Grisham was.
Well, John,
he never was.
Steve, you're old enough. You probably practiced with him a little bit.
No, I didn't actually.
You just missed him.
But he was actually. He wasn't a great lawyer because he wanted to be a writer.
Yeah.
But he served in state legislature. But he would come by here to our office and visit with Judge Chatham, who was in private practice then, and seek his advice often. And Mr. Garner next door, Randy Garner, he's still practicing. He's 83 or 84. I think some of the characters in his novels were modeled after Randy, because he's quite a character, So John's been here a lot, and and I used to tailgate at Oxford with the Chathams.
You heard that? We got that recorded too.
I want to give you a plug. I'm a Bulldog, but hey,
I'm staring at a Mississippi State degree. I'm glad you brought that up.
We got a mixed marriage, and so I've paid my dues in the Grove, and John would come by often to the Hernando tent back in the day. So. Nice little talk about John there.
I've heard that story before. HR is Harry Rex that's in Time to Kill. I think that's which one it is. But I'm looking. I always heard. My father-in-law, he's no longer with us, but he said he went to high school with John Grisham, and John was always cheating off him in English class.
There you go.
So that's kind of the family story there. But so enough about that. We kind of went on a tangent there, but it was a good tangent. I liked it. We also had another real good piece of discussion last night on changing some ordinances, or maybe putting a stay on enforcement of ordinances to add that to the agenda. And I know that's something
you'd load this episode with all the meat in the beginning, man.
Yeah.
Is that not what we want? Is that not what we're here to?
I like just messing.
It's kind of good just to get to it. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
what Ben's referring to is Alderman Kitchens also made a motion to that was seconded to add discussion for possibly. I believe his term was to not enforce the sign and noise ordinance.
Right.
Suspend or put a stay on the enforcement.
Correct. And, in my view on this, and I had a chance to look at that, fortunately, before we got to the meeting, a couple of things. Certainly those items could have been added to the agenda, and so last minute on something like that, it's important. And so fortunately I had a chance to look at it. And, you guys are duly elected officials in the city of Hernando. You are given the duty to make rules and ordinances for our city, okay? So the sign ordinance was approved, and I think Ben did not vote for it. And that's great. If you don't like it, don't vote for it. But it passed, and as I recall, no one came out and objected to the sign ordinance. And so the problem with the ordinance is it has to meet constitutional, guidelines, and it has to pass muster, okay? I didn't write the ordinance. Our planning director pretty much took that role on and presented me with questions of constitutionality, okay? So I had a chance to review all of that. We had a new case, Supreme Court case that came down basically says, you cannot you can't control content. Okay, you can't say the political sign's okay or not okay, but a garage sign sale is okay. So, the point of the whole, I'm probably getting long here, but the point of it is that that's a legally binding ordinance on the citizens of Hernando, and so to change an ordinance, you have to give notice to the public. Okay, it has to be published, and so, in my opinion, what Mr. Kitchen wanted to do was to change it. He did not want to enforce it. Okay, and that is there's an enforcement aspect of the ordinance. That's if you take it out, then that's a change, and so that's where that landed, in my opinion. I know he wasn't happy about it, but sometimes we don't agree, but that doesn't mean we will not agree on many other things or get along just well with other things that come before the board.
There's always a few things that I think at every meeting where there's disagreement, and it's healthy.
Sure.
There's also, I think, there's somewhat of a misunderstanding about aldermen's roles and the mayor's role. The mayor's duty by state statute is to enforce the laws and ordinances of the city.
Correct.
It is not the alderman's roles to direct department heads to enforce ordinances. That's just how it works in the state of Mississippi.
Right, and and the other aspect of the argument last night is that this sign ordinance. How long has it been in effect? A little over a year?
About a year. Yeah, about a year.
Maybe longer than
I think we passed it in May of last year, then we revised it just a little bit in August
true.
of last year.
Okay, so less than a year. There hasn't been a lot of opportunity to look at enforcement or unequal enforcement of the ordinance, okay? The situation that we came down with here now is that we have a hotly contested Senate race, and both contestants are good friends of mine. Mike McClendon's been a friend a long time, and I have not known John nearly as long, but I know them both, and we all go to church together. And they both were violating the ordinance, and so I don't think it's healthy for the public to perceive that the city doesn't enforce its ordinances. Okay. If you have an ordinance that needs to be enforced, and that was the general agreement among the talk on Hernando happenings. They can go anywhere, but there was some consistency, and I don't spend a lot of time reading it. But if it's an issue like this, I will kind of get a feel for what's going on, and there was a basic thought that the city doesn't enforce it. Well, the city has enforced it, and the city is enforcing it against all candidates. No one's being treated differently than anybody else. And that was kind of the issue that Mr. Kitchens was talking about. And so I strongly disagree with that. No one's being treated any differently than anybody else. The city is just enforcing its ordinance, and the signs have come down. And so there's not an enforcement issue, and it's not a equality issue. I mean, everything is proceeding as the vote passed and as it was, put into effect.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I mean, this has been a long-going issue, so I'm just to kind of give a history lesson here.
Sure.
So tell me if I get too long, but in 2016, the Supreme Court ruled in a case in Arizona about what you just mentioned about regulating the content of a sign. Okay, and so that made a lot of these city ordinances across the country unconstitutional. That was challenged by the city of South Haven in the 2017 election cycle. In the city of Hernando, we pretty much followed what we had at the books in the 2017 election.
That's correct, yeah.
Was not an issue.
As far as
In the 2021 election cycle, the city attorney at that time took the position that the city could not enforce an unconstitutional ordinance. And so candidates at that time openly violated the unconstitutional ordinance.
Correct.
Okay. And so when we got in office, that was something that I think we all kind of talked about, getting something that is constitutional in place. It took us 4 years because we took care of other things, but we got something in place in 2024. I think August, I think was the last time we revised it.
Right. And I think you know the history of that better than I do, so I'm glad you took the chance to talk about that for a minute.
And so from what I understand, there were some minor infractions in the municipal elections But as Ben has already said, it's not the Board of Aldermen's responsibility to enforce ordinances. That's the mayor and his staff. We can't direct the day-to-day operations. I don't know why they chose to, if they did that intentionally or just didn't have the staffing or whatever. Just by nature, a political sign is political. So if you tell one person to take it down, the other person's probably going to be mad. So
yeah, and just
that's probably some reasoning why that was taking place.
Sure, and just to comment on the role of the board and the role of the mayor and the role of the city attorney, I don't make the rules. Okay, I just get asked about the legality of the rules or whether or not a rule would get us in trouble in any kind of way, or and things of that nature. Or is this contract good? Is this contract okay? What we got a notice letter on a potential lawsuit. What do we need to do? That's what I get. That's my role. So my opinion is not based on whether I like the ordinance or dislike the ordinance. Okay, I'm going to give an opinion on the legality of whatever anyone's trying to do, and that's my role to you guys. But in this situation, it's my role to the mayor is to let him know what standing he has to do his job. So that's all part of government, and sometimes governing is not easy, but that's what we got hired to do and elected to do. So
to piggyback on that, about 2 weeks ago, I think someone brought it to the planning director's attention that both candidates was openly violating the ordinance. We had a sign committee meeting, and the direction of the sign committee was we need to enforce what's on the books. So communication was sent to both candidates, and both candidates have complied.
Correct.
Which is great. That's what the rules are for. So I don't make my decisions based on Facebook posts.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, I wasn't even insinuating that at all. I mean, I agree.
Well, no, I'm not talking.
Sure.
But there's some people in this community that somebody puts on Facebook, it's true, and then everybody's it's got to be some crisis sometimes.
Right.
To be the boogeyman.
Oh, sure. Yeah, but if you're going to pass an ordinance, you definitely need to enforce it. I mean, there's no question about that. Why even have it if you're not going to?
And if there's people out there that think the ordinance is not constitutional, tell them to file a lawsuit.
Yeah, well, I don't want them to do that because then we got to spend more time defending it.
I'm tired of hearing about it. What I'm saying, I'm tired of hearing about it.
Right, but it is constitutional, and we're not the only city in America that has a sign ordinance. Okay, I mean, many cities do. All the county cities do. Oxford does. I'm sure Starkville does. I mean, there's rules that we have to put in place for people. For the body as a whole, okay, for the citizenry as a whole. It's not just for one candidate or one other candidate or because you don't like this particular issue or you feel this way about something else. You guys try to make decisions that are going to best serve the community as a whole and make it better. And that arises on something like a sign ordinance or even a noise ordinance, okay? But there's a point, and I know Ben has made the point, is the simpler the better in the ordinance, and I could not agree with you any more on that point. I mean, it takes me a while to read these ordinances and I got to read them more than once, and and if we're going to make any changes, we'd put an eye towards trying to simplify things a little bit, if possible, where we can. Well, and Austin, our planning director, makes the point on the sign ordinance is that he felt like he had to put a lot of detail in there so it would correlate to all the kinds of signs that we have. There's all kinds of little signs and signages and things that go on. Some of them get more attention than others. Big campaign signs, 4x8s, during this period of the year, they're going to get attention. Sure. On election day, it's hard to govern that, okay? It's hard to run around and do everything on election day, but certainly you can expect going forward, I would think, that the mayor has asked that the ordinance be enforced, and that's where we are.
And I think that we have talked about signs a good bit. I think we've got it pretty well covered, right? You good, Chad? I know you're tired of talking about it.
Huh? Yeah. Well, I'm just. I mean, we got so much other things going on, and whether if Mike McClellan or John Stevenson has a 4x8 sign at the lumberyard or whatever, I'm tired of hearing about it. I'm just sick of it.
Sure.
And you know this. I'd volunteered to call both of them.
Yeah.
And to tell them what was going to happen because they're both friends of mine. So, and that's the way it should be in a town like Hernando. That's what makes Hernando great.
Sure.
So we try to keep that. We want to keep that. I know elections get highly contested, but hopefully, when all this is over, everyone will cool off.
And I still support and believe what I've mentioned to some of the other aldermen is that we need a ordinance and bylaw review committee that is going through these things. When was the last time we really looked at the bylaws of the city to see if there's anything that's outdated that needs to be changed and whatever else, and ordinances as well to make them as simple as possible for the pure reason that we're in an ever-changing world. Things are constantly in motion, and we need to be reviewing that. Additionally, the people that are tasked with enforcing these, whether it's code enforcement, police officers, whatever else, in many cases, they've got about a 30 to 45 second window to explain to someone, this is what you can't be doing, and this is why. And we need to make it as simple as possible to help them do their jobs as effectively as possible.
And so the public understands the role of the city attorney. Since I'm your guest today, when you talk about that type of thing, Ben, a review committee, a garbage contract committee, every committee, guess who's going to be on the committee? City attorney. Okay,
That's right.
That's
and
right.
that takes time.
It does.
And I just don't want people to lose sight of that, is that it can be demanding. No one's complaining at all. It's just let's just keep that in mind. And but hey, like I said, it's a calling, and I really have enjoyed it. It's a duty that I appreciate. So.
I think I've told this story before, but hopefully people will indulge listening to it again. But my granddaddy was a Southern Baptist preacher, and he always said, do you know how the camel was created? By a Southern Baptist committee. They were like, they were charged with coming up with the idea for a horse, and they ended up with a camel. So we need something that's got a lot of water retention, and we need something stand the heat and everything else. They put this weird looking thing together. Like, here we go. So that just a funny little story from back in the day. But we also had, if you want to move, you good? You got more?
Well, one more thing.
Okay.
I think we've made the point that I think once this election cycle is over with, we're going to have some type of committee to review the noise inside ordinance. I think there's some recommended changes.
Sure.
That we will do that. So
that
should be coming this fall.
Right. Just real briefly on that, the board asked me to review that last fall, and I've spent time doing that. And there are some recommendations that I think will help a lot. And so at some point when that's properly before the board, and we've had a chance to finish that review and talk about it, I think we can make changes that will hopefully make people understand the ordinance better and make it more easily enforceable. It's just something that's functional. Like you said, being something more, maybe a little bit more simple and just easier to understand and put into practice.
We will move on to some of the other high water marks of the meeting if we can.
Yeah, I think we talked enough about that.
We had moved on from that. We had some items to note. One thing, the Baptist family, I guess, is having a 22nd family reunion coming up. That if you have lived here very long, you've probably heard that last name. Baptist Road is right up there off Pleasant Hill Road, and connects two of the east-west corridors that go through this part of DeSoto County.
What I read in the resolution, I didn't know the patriarch of that family was the first African American to buy property in DeSoto County.
Yeah, that's pretty.
That shows you how long
really
they've
awesome.
been. Yeah.
Big historical deal. So congratulations to them on having a big family reunion coming up. Denise Harden was our Public Works Employee of the Month. She's really somebody that keeps them on task and keeps them going. Has probably dealt with a lot of angry phone calls about debris pickup in the last 6 weeks. And folks, don't stop with the phone calls. Let us know. Send us text. Send us calls. If you have a huge pile that needs to be addressed, or you have something that's blocking drainage, let us know so we can get it addressed.
I had a call this morning, and I talked to the Public Works Department. They got it picked up this afternoon. So
they do a great job.
They're working hard to do the best they can. We also had this was something that popped up that was kind of surprising. In all honesty, is temporarily discontinuing the contributions to Crime Stoppers. So I don't know how much we can talk about this. We more or less we got an email from the police chief of South Haven, Seth Kern, who I think has been the police chief for less than a couple months.
Yeah, and Seth is from Hernando, so family raised here. I mean, not from Hernando, new to Hernando, but lives in Hernando, and he's going to make a great police chief. And so I was proud of him getting appointed.
They have they looked into, I guess the city of South Haven looked into some of the contributions that were being made to Crime Stoppers and tips being paid out accordingly and in a timely manner and that sort of thing. And I guess there's been some inconsistencies uncovered and some
discrepancies.
Discrepancies is another way to look at it. And so between the police chief in Hernando and the police chief in Horn Lake, I think everybody's kind of come together to say, look, it's best that we discontinue these contributions for a little while.
I want to say that the Crime Stoppers program is kind of a dated program with social media and cell phones and things. So it's not the Crime Stoppers of 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah, it's not as vital to serving that role.
Bill Rasco set up that program, I think, in the late 1990s, early 2000s. And I think it was very viable at that time. And then obviously he became sheriff later on and things like that. And so I think it's just kind of fell, and again, with the communication has changed, really, the internet, emails, the Crime Stopper system is not what it once was. And so it may be time to look at take those contributions and put them in a different way.
It's unfortunate to hear that it's going on because you'd like to think that this is an effective program that's, helping to to curb some of the criminal activity and bring justice. But it seems like there's some inconsistencies there, so we'll have to get that addressed. I think the DA's office is doing an investigation now, so we'll have to see how that goes. But
your buddy Shad may be involved in that.
Man, you don't want him to listen. If he walks in your office, you better just
pay attention.
Yeah, you better
call the city attorney.
Yeah, quit running the paper shredder if he walks in.
You better call your private attorney.
Yeah, you better be. I'm just saying. We appointed several. I hate to go through all these folks that we appointed. We'll hit some of the big ones here. City Clerk Pam Powell. She's served the city for the last 4 years and done a good job for us. Really getting the city caught up on some things in that role. Police chief.
Pam brought a ton of experience from South Haven.
Yes.
I'm not sure how long she was there, but I would say this is that just from our all three of us starting at the same time, Pam really offered a lot of stability in the way we approach things. So,
and she's a great resident of Ward 4 too, by the way. Yeah, great resident of Ward 4.
Yeah. Look at him. Always trying to get a vote. Always trying to get a vote over
but
here.
I think if we break the news, Ben, I think she's planning maybe to possibly retire in the near future.
Chad, I'm gonna let you say that and not me.
I think that may be out of it. I think that is accurate.
So we have a great we have other great clerks, so she's not just sitting there not making sure people are learning what they're doing. That's what she's doing. So and how to do the job.
We reappointed our police chief Shane Ellis, also our fire chief Marshall Berry, our municipal judge Adam Emerson, continuing to serve in that role. And we also reappointed our planning commission. We had some returning members: Russell Jordan, Keith Hawkins, Shay Skeen, Andy Arndt, Justin Max, and Kevin Thorne. And then the two new planning commissioners are Larry Newsom, which he was appointed by Kit Kitchens.
Another great resident of Ward 4.
Hey, I want to give a shout out to Larry Newsom. He's a Memphis Prep Panther from Whitehaven, so. Go Panthers! Even though I went to the rival high school and we beat them off in sports. So hey, but I'm gonna give you a hand today, Larry.
Do you have a cool nickname in high school?
Yeah, his name is Lair. So next time you see him,
I'm gonna start calling him Lair.
Call him Lair.
We also had also joined the planning commission is Jarrett Mashaw, who was a former Republican.
With the E, Ben, with the E.
Jarrett with the E, two E's.
Two E's, two R's, two T's. Jarrett Mashaw, who's a former Republican candidate for alderman at large. And was appointed by the Alderman at Large, Lauren McClendon, to the Planning Commission. So, congratulations to them. And I know that they have, they're folks that have lived here for a little while and shown a lot of interest in the direction of the city. And I'm sure they'll do a great job. we've already touched on some of these other things, and so we will turn on over to something that Chad and I think we're not in favor of, and we can kind of discuss it real quickly if you're good with that.
Sure,
right?
sure. What's that?
So we looked at the city's
purchasing
policy resolution there. So the city's current resolution puts that purchasing policy that anything that's $75,000 or less, as long as it's a budgeted item,
and you have two competitive bids,
two competitive quotes or bids or whatever it might be.
Excuse me. 75 or less, two quotes.
It doesn't require any kind of board approval or additional action, and so that's something that I think. I'm only speaking for myself. Then you can say what you want.
I'll give the shining example that I have. Okay, is so we get a docket of claims, and if the purchase is made, say they bought a vehicle. The vehicle's maybe $60,000, $55,000, $60,000, and they drive the vehicle to the board meeting, which has happened, and we turn down that docket of claims. What do we do with that car, Mr. Attorney?
Hey, y'all have not brought me that issue yet. So
what I'm saying,
that's not something you want to be happening.
So,
that's for sure.
Like DeSoto County government, they have a $25,000 limit. Several others have a 20.
Yeah,
so
I think
any
the 75 is based on state law. That was changed, and so we're mirroring that. But you certainly can change it. You can as a board, you can certainly.
Sure. So what DeSoto County does is any purchase over $25,000 has to have board approval prior to, it being purchased. Whereas we work on a purchase order system, so that a lot of times the stuff has already maybe even been used by the time we're actually approving a docket of claims. If it's something minor, maybe bandages or whatever, and so, which is fine. But that's just we're like a net 60 pay system. So is that kind of your example, Ben?
Yeah, I think that when we're looking at this, I'm a nerd. I think everybody knows that. And my thing I always look at is let's look at the data of how many purchases are occurring that are in that bucket, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many purchases are in that 50 to 75 or 25 to 50 or whatever it may be. And if it's not that many, then let's really just kind of dig in a little bit and make sure that it's something that is really needed and that those purchases need to be made. And it's not going to just grind a government to a halt by any means. And let's really think about the cash flow situation that's going on. The city, in all honesty, there are times when the city has more cash and there's times when it does not. So making a $74,000 purchase in December is probably not a great idea because the city may not just have the cash to be able to, not necessarily to cover it, but to cover it and be able to continue operating as normal. So I think that it would be wise for us to maybe put a little bit more of a guardrail there.
Well, to further on my example, so what happened early on in our term, I think y'all remember this because it was a contentious meeting, is we had budgeted for 6 police cars for our police department. He bought 4 police cars and a Tahoe. Okay.
Yeah.
And drove the Tahoe to the meeting. There wasn't nothing we could do about it because of a policy like this. If he needed a Tahoe, he should have put it in the budget. But I think that was an intentional act. But I don't want to pick on him. He's no longer with the city. He's retired. But that would give us another check on that. And there's nothing wrong with that in my opinion.
Sure. Well, that's your role as alderman to govern that part of what we do and how we spend money. And I'm glad you made the point that it was not our current chief, but certainly you want to control that, and you want, and so I think that would, the board probably be receptive to that. Certainly, I think the public would be. And if you're asking me, in my legal opinion, I think you can go ahead and do that.
And to be fairness too, we had been in a meeting for I think an hour and 20 minutes at that point, and the chip, every other item had been like a roll call vote, and he did that one by voice vote, which is fine. We can always, when we look at our budget, maybe come back and change that policy later. So it's no big deal.
That'll be something we'll have to look at as the budget cycle rolls on. Speaking of which, that was another thing that happened early on in the meeting. We did set a public hearing for the tax levy and budget for fiscal year 26. So that will be something that happens in the next 30 days, probably the first meeting we have in August. The county, Jeff Fitch and his office do a phenomenal job over there. Great job, Jeff. Love the old Land Cruiser. I love every time I see it roll through town. I'm like, there goes Jeff.
Circling back real quick before we move on, Ben, talking about the Planning Commission, that is part of our job as city attorney, is to attend those meetings. And those are once a month, and the board meetings are twice a month. That's all in, part of the retainer. We didn't really mention Josie Gilder.
Yes.
We did a little bit, but Josie Gilder has been hired as the assistant city attorney. She's a fantastic, smart young attorney. She has attended those meetings for the past 4 years, the planning commission meetings, and those guys do such a good job. Those meetings can go for a while, but they're wanting to do what's best for the city of Hernando. So she'll continue doing that, and then she'll also be helping me in my primary role is handling all the other civil matters that we do. So
there's some really, in those meetings you can really get into the nitty gritty of what's going on. Whether it's with a development or with a variance that's being requested for a certain kind of development.
Hernando has a lot of planning needs at this time because we are growing. The other cities have already grown a lot. We are that city now. And so those demands are a lot higher than they were 8 years ago for the committee, for the city attorney, for the Board of Aldermen to consider all these changes, all these land purchases, around, whatever we're doing. Appreciate our commissioners, and we look forward to working with them.
So circling back to the budget conversation, I started to dive into it. So Jeff Fitch's office, within the next 10 days or so, will have some estimates for the mayor's office to start the budget process. So what that looks like is that Jeff will say this is what the property tax revenue would look like, which is a very significant chunk of the city's budget. So he'll say, well, it's going to increase about X percent, whatever the number is. Also, what we'll probably have a better feel on is Jeff has been tasked with reassessing property values as well per state law. So he is, or per the legislature, he's being pushed to do that as well. So there's going to be a lot more discussion on that. We probably need to have Jeff on. So Jeff, if you're listening, I don't know if he's a loyal listener. I have a feeling he might listen from time to time, or somebody who knows Jeff. Tell him we'd love to have him on to
reach out
explain
to him
this
and
process
see if he'll come on next time
a little bit more, because I think he's somebody that always does a great job of explaining exactly what his role is.
And we've talked about this before. Basically, he's been instructed by the state he's got to go from 50% to 80%, which is a dramatic increase in the assessed value. So people are most likely going to see some type of increase because you also that affects school board millage rate, the county millage rate in the city. I'm just speaking for myself. I'm leaning more toward we lower our millage to make it neutral, but there is some negatives in that, because I think if you're 65 and older, your assessed value is frozen, which also the ad valorem tax also applies to your vehicle. So we would see a decrease in the millage rate on vehicles. So that's something we all have to consider. But obviously, my position is we need to be their tax rate needs to be as friendly to the homeowners as possible.
Yeah, and again, that's comes with your experience in the 4 years that you've been serving. And, you both have done such a great job, and all those things you start considering when you try to make the right decisions for everyone in our community. And so, I know you both do a good job going forward with that. One last thing.
I forgot. He's also another very highly respected Ward 4 resident.
Oh, well, thank you.
City attorney.
We've been there. Been there 22 years now. Of course, my wife's from here lifelong, so we're what you would call old school Hernando. So,
old school Hernando.
Yeah, that's
absolutely.
It's a term,
The one last thing I failed to mention from our meeting. We elected a mayor pro tem, Andrew Miller. So he will serve in he will chair the board in the mayor's absence. So if Mayor Johnson is out of town or is sick or something like that, needs to step out, Andrew Miller will be our person again for the next 4 years. I was proud to nominate him. He, of course, accepted the nomination. I think it's something he enjoys doing.
Sure.
He is the elder statesman on the board. He served on the board for, we just had him on, 32 years?
He's been in and out for 32 years. He took some, he ran and got elected, and then he had to come off because of the Hatch Act, because he worked for the federal government, and then he was a planning commissioner for a little bit, and then the gentleman moved out of the ward, and so he resigned and he took over. So I think he's actively been on there since I think 2002 or something like that.
Yeah,
but he's been around city government since
Sure.
1989 or something like that.
And I'll say this, I'm definitely believe there's a lot of wisdom in term limits. But when you talk about local government with someone like Andrew Miller, he does such a good job and represents the city and his ward so well. I was proud that he was nominated by you, Ben, and unanimously elected as Mayor Pro Tem. Just for example, just about 2 months ago, the mayor was out of town on business, and we needed some documents signed to quiet title to sell a piece of property that the city made money on, and Andrew Miller was the one who would do that, and he certainly made himself available, and we got that done. So he's a very important part of what makes our city work, and I just want to give all the respect to him for sure.
Well, so Mississippi Municipal League is our organization that advocates for cities throughout in the state of Mississippi, and he's in the Hall of Fame there. He's very well respected. He's chaired the education committee, I think, for years. He told me on our podcast, he said he's now going to oversee the youth leadership programs across the mayor youth leadership programs across the state. He has a lot of contacts in other cities because he's been there so long. And so he's just a great resource to talk to. I think Ben does too. We go to lunch with him once a month or so and just pick his brain about different things and stuff like that. So
he also officially made us like teachers for a minute because we taught a class on podcasting to small communities and cities and whatnot, and that was an intense class.
I can go along with making you guys teachers, but if he tries to make you preachers, I don't know. That's where I draw the line right there.
So I have a lot of respect for Andrew, and he's one that's taught me that we may have a fierce debate in the meeting, but he's always the first one to come over after the meeting and say, "Hey, good job, everything good with you." So that's something I've picked up on in my first term and trying to carry over to my career.
So my grandmother used to say, and yours probably did something like this, is that if everyone thought the same, it'd be an awfully boring world. So
that's right.
Everyone has different viewpoints, and it's good to have vigorous debates and be able to express our opinions and hopefully be able to get along afterwards. So.
Well, we certainly appreciate. I know Mr. Pittman, Steve. You only have so many hours in the day, so we appreciate you giving us an hour of your time today. That is our July 1st meeting. The first meeting of the new board has concluded, and we've covered it pretty extensively. We'll have another meeting coming up on July 15th, and we'll have a show later on in this month. Hopefully we can get Jeff Fitch in here to talk about property taxes and some of the other things coming up. But for now, don't forget, July 4th weekend coming up. We got the Veterans Memorial unveiling on the 4th at 9 o'clock, and then free hamburgers on the square for the farmers market on the 5th. Make sure you come out and check it out.
Well, thanks for having me, and I hope everyone has a happy and healthy 4th of July.
Steve, thanks so much for joining us. For Steve Pittman, I'm Ward 6 Alderman Ben Piper.
Ward for Alderman Chad Wicker.
Thanks for listening.
Everybody's waiting on a train, waiting on a train.